I'm Blythe Wilson, Deputy Director for our region, our Wild West region here. And I also work for California State Parks at the Orange Coast District as a regional interpretive specialist. So I'm really excited to see what's going to come of this symposium. I hope that we will gather some great resources and be together and figure this out. So without further ado, I will introduce you to our speakers. I'm going to just, let's see here, share this for you. Well, first of all, we're going to have our speakers that are going to be talking for about 45 minutes. Then for about a half an hour, we're going to have breakout rooms so that each of us can have a chance to talk about some of the things that are most important to us. And then we're going to get back together and do some of our closing thoughts and that type of thing. So I guess our first speaker is Christian, right? Hello, Christian. Hello. So Christian, I hear that you are the Director of Education for one of the largest education programs in the aquarium world at the Living Planet Aquarium in Salt Lake City, Utah at one point, right?
Yes, that was my previous role. I'm currently the Curator of Education at the Living Desert Zoo and Gardens in just outside of Palm Springs. I like the living title in whatever organization I work for.
Very, very good. And also you are a father of 3 girls, I hear? Mm-hmm. Yes? And yes. And you're helping to build a sustainable world for your future daughters. I love that. So we're going to start with you today. And I'd love to hear about what is going on at the Living Desert Zoo and Gardens. What's going on with COVID and what's happening there?
Sure. Thanks for inviting me. I joined NAI a few years ago when I was Director of Education at the Living Planet Aquarium. And we had an outreach program that was free that went to every single school in the entire state every single year. So we saw hundreds of thousands of students. And so we wanted to have a really well-organized program that really helped to build not just a cool, fun presentation, but really build impact, which is one of my key terms. And it's my personal theme all the time of, are we building impact? Are we not just communicating and checking off numbers, but are we actually building conservation-minded people on the back end of our presentation? Or are kids leaving what they hear from us and thinking, you know what, I can go home and switch to a reusable straws. I can go home and help plant a milkweed plant to, save monarch butterflies. I can do these things. Oh, I almost forgot. Aaron, I'm going to go with bonnet-head shark. Is that okay? Okay, thank you. Sorry, almost forgot about that. Those are my personal favorite. So much like many of you, COVID kind of came out of nowhere for us. We are in a community with a very high ratio of retired families. So we had to fully shut down as they are identified as one of the more susceptible populations. We do have a good number of families out here in the Coachella Valley, but they do tend to be on the lower affluency side of things. Almost every school here is Title I. And many of those families are in the service industries. So a lot of them were titled as essential workers, working in farm fields, medical fields, those types of things. So we suddenly had a whole bunch of kids at home with teachers that needed content immediately, and it didn't exist. So we took that on ourselves. I also had an education team of approximately 13 people when COVID started. And in one day on April 1st, I'm not kidding about this, we lost them all. So the department became myself and the volunteer coordinator, but we had no volunteers on site. So, and then we were tasked to come up with virtual content, and we had no anything. So we put our heads together and started thinking, what will create the most impact? What will be the most effective use of our bandwidth, use of our funding? We had some existing grants that were targeted to bring kids to the zoo. So the first thing we did actually was we recontacted those grants and asked if we could change the grants to apply to virtual content creation. And we were able to actually use some of that money to bring on some interns, which we were able to help move some of the work to, which we would not have been able to accomplish without them. But we're also able to purchase all of our video and editing software and everything else. If anybody is curious about what any of that, the hardware and software that we purchased, I'm happy to share that. At the very end of my chat, I'll post my email so people can reach out to me. We found some really good solutions, pretty inexpensive, that puts out good quality content as well. We intentionally decided to not focus on creating camps. I know that's a big one for a lot of people. It's considered a big revenue source. But with the bandwidth of only 2 people, we didn't feel like we could deliver them in a volume that would really make it justifiable. Plus, again, my big thing is always, are we creating impact, not just providing a service, but actually building environmental constructs in the people that have come to listen to us. So we decided to create virtual field trips was our primary goal, with the objective of building partnerships that led into something called Family Field Trip Days, which I will talk about a little bit later. I'll try to get through the rest of this as fast as I can. The 2 models for virtual field trips seem to be either an on-demand model, where you're actually on the camera, you're doing something live for the classes, which teachers definitely want. But as we had such a high demand of that and such a low amount of bandwidth to deliver it, we chose to not go in that direction. We chose to go the on-demand content direction, where we pre-recorded activities and videos, and then we posted those on the website so the teachers could access those whenever it fit best into their vocabulary. The other way that we formatted this that I felt was key was, instead of trying to write out a full lesson plan with objectives and standard benchmark attachments and everything else, we approached more of a Pinterest board type approach. From my experience, I've learned that teachers want to fit things into their curriculum however they do it. And even if they find a great lesson plan, they'll just throw out the lesson plan and pull out the pieces that they really want for them. So I just said, let's just provide a whole bunch of piece options like a Pinterest board, and let the teachers pick and choose what works for them, and then build that into their curriculum. So every activity virtual field trip, we used Canva, which is, there's actually a free version for nonprofits. You just have to call them and give them your nonprofit number, and they'll let you use it for free. And we were able to build that using that tool to build all of our worksheets that not only include pre-activities and pre-knowledge, but also post-activity options, as well as the links to videos that we just posted on YouTube that take them through a bit of a tour of the zoo, but cover a specific topic like desert adaptations, symbiosis, a particular animal like giraffes, those types of things, camouflage. And that's the video of content that we put on there. So we used these videos to leverage building relationships with many of the schools, not only in the Coachella Valley itself, but outside, but also to build relationships with a lot of homeschool co-ops and charter schools that are becoming extremely popular in our area right now. And we leveraged all of this into what we called Family Field Trip Days. We are still an organization that has to have revenue in order to operate. And grants are one major source of revenue, yes, but the other one is ticket sales at our window, at our gates. So we had to find ways to bring people here, and losing field trips was a huge hit to our annual revenue. So I was asked to find some way to provide in-person field trip experiences for all these students, so we could try to rescue that, not only for the revenue side, but again, to get those kids in front of animals, to build empathy and create impact. Again, I keep saying that word. That's my big word, is our messaging and experiences creating impact. So Family Field Trip Day, what that does is, we found we were allowed to bring family groups to the zoo, and we are open now here, I should add. We're one of the few outdoor places that is open in our entire area, but a lot of people don't know that we're open. And with being a zoo, we have a lot of ability to social distance. So it's a great place for families to get out of the house, but we have to let them know that they could come. So my plan for Family Field Trip Days, we contact the school. We set up a very specific day for that school to come, and every enrolled family at that school is able to come that specific day for the field trip rate. So every single child, we didn't care if they were actually at that school or a middle school or a high school. it didn't matter to us. They all got in for the student rates charge, and then 2 adults per family group got in for the chaperone rate.
Hey, Christian,
Yes.
I'm wondering if, I love all the information you're giving, but I'm wondering, just in the interest of time, is it possible to put some of the information in the chat for
100%.
everybody?
I was actually just about to be finished.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I'll let you wrap up your thought there, and then we'll move on to the next.
All
Yeah.
I was going to say was we used the virtual field trips to advertise for the family field trips that the principals then advertised to their families. And then they brought all the families to us with very little effort on our part. And that resulted in somewhere between 200 and 1,000 extra guests every single day, which was enormous opportunity for us. So that was the last point I was going to make on these. And I recognize with only 7 minutes that I couldn't go into lots of detail on all these things. So just giving you a couple quick highlights of the types of things that we provided. And then I'm happy to answer other questions through email or connection later.
Awesome. I really, really appreciate that. Thank you so much. That's such good insight there. Sorry, my phone is ringing there. Anyway, yeah, so our next presenter is Kevin Wright from the Monterey Bay Aquarium. Are you ready, Kevin?
I'm ready.
Still there? Okay. So Kevin is the security manager there and has over 25 years of experience working in guest experience fields. And for the past 19 years, it has been his pleasure to work at the Monterey Bay Aquarium. And during that time, he has filled several different positions within the guest experience division. He's currently the manager for security department within the guest experience division. And additionally, Kevin is one of the certified interpretive trainers and certified interpretive host trainer at the aquarium. So wow, you wear a lot of hats there. And you hold certifications with the state of California in emergency management. So that's probably been a very useful thing these days. So anyway, take it away, Kevin. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, so it's funny, the bio is actually out of date. I am now one of the lone survivors of the CAG instructors. We had 7 and now I'm 1. We cut mid-May, early June, we cut 40% of our workforce. So that meant all of our frontline hourly staff, all of our frontline volunteers, since most of the volunteers are in the at-risk age group. When we shut down March 13th, we started to make plans for a couple weeks of this. But about May, we decided that this is going to go, we realized this was going to go longer, and we started to make long-term changes. We helped, and we, with some other institutions, wrote a reopening plan based on the state standards and gave it to the state what we thought would be above and beyond. The fun part was the state then took that plan and kind of made it the standard for zoos and aquariums to reopen. Currently, we sit as the only aquarium in California not to have reopened, and one of the only aquariums in the country to not have reopened. We have the unfortunate problem of we have no outdoor exhibits. Everything's indoors, so we're extremely limited. So coming into reopening, we had to look at, okay, our member base or volunteer base is the at-risk category. We've let go of the entire frontline staff. So a staff of 60 on a normal day for operations, taking tickets, facilitating groups, facilitating tours and stuff like that will now have to be run with 14 people. Keep in mind, it's a 7-day-a-week operation. So we closed high touch areas, both because of state guidelines. So if you've been to the aquarium before, we have the bat rays and the touch pools and stuff like that. The state told us we couldn't open those at least for the first 2 weeks of our reopen. But we also eliminated it because it's just high contact. What we know now, we know that the contact areas aren't as big of a concern as much as the people and density of people. But for staffing purposes, we're still planning on keeping those areas closed. Knowing that our volunteer pool is so high risk, and knowing that we probably will have a cadre of them not come back, we had to kind of tilt and look at who are we going to train. If you've been around me at all, you know that the security department here acts as a little different. We work as enforcement a fraction of the time, but a lot of times we work as interpreters talking about the exhibits, wayfinding and stuff like that. We're taking advantage right now of the downtime and CIG training all of the officers and a couple of the admin staff. So if when we reopen soon, we'll have the entire department will be CIG trained. In the past, it was host trained, but now they're going to be CIG trained. We're doing that part because the frontline interpreters are now gone. They were laid off. The program presenters were gone because they were laid off. And this was in part because each of those programs are people dense, and we can't really offer programs. If you've been here before, you know how the Kelp Forest can be very busy. The auditorium shows can be very busy, and we can't just go back to normal. So those programs are going to go away for a while. We looked at if we train everybody who is currently employed to do everything that everyone else used to do, we will be okay. That being said, my team now disinfects. So the aquarium sits on 3.5 acres and we have 19 buildings in 3 cities. Security now every other night disinfects a different building. They'll empty trash in buildings. The aquarium as a whole is working remotely, but if you work on site, you have to clean your own bathrooms, clean your own kitchenette, dump your own trash because all of the frontline custodial staff is gone. But it also is managers, directors have been learned how to use the floor scrubber, fill chemical buckets. No one is above any of the jobs. And that goes down to my team as well. So my team is currently rolling out part of a training program to start doing virtual tours. We knew we were going to be closed for the long haul. We knew that, it was we'd have to be creative. We didn't think that it was going to be this long. I don't think anybody did. So we do virtual tours now, which are much like a normal visit. It's a predetermined route and it's all done via iPads and Zoom, and the guests can interact with the 2 presenters as much as they want. It's more like a digital conversation. We started it out with donors to get them committed to continually giving us the support we needed. When all is said and done, I think we will be short last year 55 million. And we're coming up on, in 3 weeks, we will have lost an entire year's worth of revenue. So we had to look at any way we could to get that financial support back in the building. We started doing, we have had a membership base that's pretty hardy and healthy for a long time. Our member nights have always been super popular. Well, since they're popular, we can't also have them inside the facility. So we switched that to virtual as well. And we will, I believe, and I will leave my email. So if there's further questions, I can point you to the right places. I believe it's a small fee or a nominal fee, but it's enough that it's not breaking the bank. I want to say it's $10. I think I'm wrong. But they do it where it's a virtual kind of celebration. We had a dance party and the security officers were all told, hey, if you want to dance on camera, you can do it. I had a whopping 1 who wanted to do it. And it turns out he was the hit of the Halloween dance party because he dances like an idiot and everybody loved it. But it was just embracing that no one person is above what needs to be done. And it comes down to the small things. We've reached out. The aquarium is part of a small consortium of nonprofit aquariums called IVOC, so International Aquarium Visitor Operations. And it's aquariums from around the country that are based out of nonprofits. And we meet weekly to share struggles, share ideas, what you're doing, what grants you're going for, what financial loans you're getting from the government, everything you can think of. We're treating this next wave as when we get approval to open, we're not going to pounce exactly at the moment. We're going to make sure we're staged and ready to go. And we've also made sure that we are flexible in that we can treat it as a dimmer switch. If we need to ramp up, we'll change hours, we'll close hours, but make it so it suits kind of everyone's needs. And that way we don't stress out everybody that's on site. And I think that's 7 minutes. The first time I've ever been on time.
Thank you, Kevin. It sounds like you've developed a lot of great resources at the aquarium. Is there a way that you might be able to drop some of those resources in the chat? And we
will. I'm a little unique in that I'm an interpreter in a security body, but I'm also unique in that I'm a security body and I don't have a security background. I'm good at it. And so I fit in that field. So I'm kind of speaking on behalf of the others in the operations teams that are doing it. I put my email in the chat. Feel free to email me and I will get you in touch with the appropriate people, whether it's education, membership and development, or our operations team, who is kind of overseeing all those little pieces.
I appreciate that lots.
Kevin, how do we see the dancing security guard video? Is there a recording of such things?
I have to find it because he was so impressed with it. And what's even funnier is he didn't know how to do all these goofy, whatever, Minecraft kid dances. So he Googled and YouTubed like 20 minutes before he was supposed to be on camera, all these stupid dances. And it was gold. If I find it, I will figure out some way to share it.
Perfect. All right, well, on to our next speaker, Amber. I think I see you there. So Amber Colbert is the cultural specialist of the Clark County Museum in Henderson, Nevada. And she currently plans and schedules educational tours for the public, private, and homeschool groups, schedules and plans various non-school group tours, oversees the museum's social media presence, plans and provides outreach opportunities for the community, assists in the development of new exhibits and management of current exhibits, supervises part-time staff, oversees retail sales operations, and oversees maintenance projects at the Clark County Museum. You've got a lot going on. You've got a lot going on. And just recently in 2019, Amber has completed her graduate level certificate in public management from the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. So take it away, Amber. What's going on with COVID in your world?
So we are a little different just in the fact that we are small. We are small at museum. We averaged typically before COVID was about 42,000 visitors. So we've been a museum since 1968, started as a small nonprofit in Henderson that struggled to kind of survive. So eventually we were taken over by Clark County, and Clark County now oversees us. We're part of the Parks and Rec department, which makes us kind of the odd sheep in the bunch. It's all Parks and Rec. They're worried about, basketball leagues and recreation centers and senior centers, where our worries are a little different. And that has caused, some differences in how we handled COVID as well. All those places are still mostly closed, where we were allowed to open pretty early on. So in Nevada, the governor actually listed museums as one of the early places that could open with casinos. So we actually came together. Finally, we're able to come back to work about 2 weeks before we opened. And it was a little different in the fact too that we weren't really allowed to work at all, even remotely at home during those closures. So we closed on March 16th. And I think we were able to come back to work fully in May. So we went a long time with kind of doing things off the books if we could, coming in when we could, and trying to outreach to our public when we could. One of the things we did originally before we even opened was our administrator is Mark Patton, known from his Pawn Stars fame. So we tried using that as much as we could and did some Q&As on Facebook Live, which became very popular, not just viewed live, but viewed after the fact as well. Kind of gave us a point where we can engage with our audience, which is mostly at that high risk age group as well. So it gave them an opportunity to come in, see different parts of the museum and ask those questions that they wanted to ask, whether it be about Mark himself or whether it be about the museum or local history. And those have been continuing since then. Once we actually opened our doors, we had to do it kind of as a staggered thing because as all of us have, we had some staff cuts, and we also had some staff that decided they did not want to return because our staff is also of the age group that's at risk. So we had to hire new staff, which was a challenge as well, because everyone's getting good unemployment rates. They think they're going to go back to where they want to go. So we actually had some hard time finding staff. So we staggered our opening. June 15th we opened, but we are only open 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Monday through Friday. We kind of did this too, kind of to try to figure out, how do we scale this? Are we going to have to limit how many people? Are we going to have to do a reservation system? Are we going to have to do guided tours through the museum? So we have 30 acres and we have over 20 historical buildings, and there are 4 full-time staff members here. So normally it's just kind of an open area for people to explore. And we didn't know if that was going to work because everything else was closed. Are we going to have a rush? So we did a kind of temporary opening, see how it goes with our limited staff, and it actually went really well. So then we started opening all day, which was our normal hours of 9 to 4:30. Then we staggered to opening on the weekend. So now we are fully open 7 days a week, 9 to 4. Our visitation has actually seen an uptick, unless COVID cases go up. When COVID cases go up, our actually visitation goes down. So it's kind of responding to what the regulations are. We did have some regulations put on us recently where we are down to 25% capacity, which brought challenges for us as well, because we don't have capacity. We have these old historical buildings and 30 acres. What is our capacity? So we've had to kind of be creative and kind of flexible on, okay, what is too much? And one of those things we actually faced is not education related, but just operations related, was Christmas cards and Christmas card pictures. People wanted to come out and take their pictures, and that was a huge amount of people we had coming out, removing their face masks and actually disrupting the people that were there for the museum itself. So we had to do a whole bunch of regulations for that and go out there and put a lot of signage and educate people why they can't come here to take their Christmas picture, and what the museum's purpose really was, and kind of try to engage them on that. And that was one of our major difficulties. Other ways is now we have in place a system if we do need to do reservations. So some of our special programs, such as school groups, when the schools start opening up, we're going to locally, we're going to a hybrid model starting March 1st. So how are we going to book those school trips? What are they going to look like? Are they going to be smaller? We have a lot of private schools starting to call and ask if they can come and do field trips. So we are mitigating kind of what size group can we take around, and our volunteers are of that sensitive age as well. And is it worth bringing them in, or do we want to keep those school tour programs really small? We went from doing school tours of up to 100 students, and we're not going to probably be able to do that. We're probably going to be able to do one class one day. Causes a little problem for our local schools because each school has 6 classes in each grade level. So how are we going to spread that out and still hit as many of the schools as we can here? Some of the other things we have done is, fortunately, I became pregnant also during that time. So I had a baby. So out of the 4 staff members, I was gone. So there was nobody here to do the education as well. So we did take a little break from our education program. We are trying to go back in. One of those things is offering virtual tours. So working with teachers to actually go and maybe highlight a building with that classroom, talk about Nevada history in that era or the couple of different eras. And so we're working with schools for that. We're also going to start working with, once they go back to schools, going to the schools themselves rather than coming to us, because transportation is going to be one of their biggest things, that they can go into the classroom, but then how do they go from the classroom to a location in the valley? We're going to continue our Facebook Lives. And then another program that I'm trying to start is to kind of engage kids to not only have a virtual tour, but then after that virtual tour, have a way to connect to volunteers. So a lot of our volunteers are missing that aspect as well. Our volunteers come out here to connect to the children of our community and kind of pass on the history that they have here in our community. Well, that bridge is kind of missing because we're not here. So if the kids are able to do a virtual program, then if they have follow-up questions and write that volunteer those follow-up questions, have the volunteer then write that student back, it bridges that connection again from people that have lived here in the past to the people that are now going to be the future of our community.
We sure all have really figured out this virtual thing as a result of COVID, it seems, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And part of it too, part of our whole thing was is it worth it as well? That was part of it, because is the kids themselves, when they come here and they walk through a door to one of the houses and they feel like they're walking into the 1950s, typically we get the response of, oh my gosh, this is real, this is awesome, this is amazing. Where if they see a picture of a 1950s house, it's not that authentic experience of actually getting to see it up close. So there is an aspect of it. We do need to physically get them here still, or at least get them to see some of the objects and kind of understand the culture and why these things were important to us at that time. And so I think going to schools is going to be one of the ways that we actually get to bring that to more of a mass audience rather than them coming here.
Yeah.
That's most of it.
Good. Yeah, it seems like a lot of changes that have had to be thought about, and it can be a little overwhelming, it seems like, for all of us, but I appreciate you sharing your thoughts. And if there's any resources that you want to share in the chat or further, please do so. Thank you so much, Amber. All right, our next speaker, moving right along here. Amy, are you there still?
I am.
All right, we've got Amy Erickson up next. She's a field naturalist at Inside the Outdoors. And Inside the Outdoors is in Orange County, and it's an environmental education arm of Orange County Department of Education. And Inside the Outdoors has been offering both field trips and in-class traveling scientist programs to schools in Orange County since 1974. Amy has been with Inside the Outdoors for 14 years in a variety of roles, but transitioned back into teaching this fall when virtual programs were launched. And Amy is also a former NAI board member and former director of Region 8. Woo! All right, thank you, Amy.
Thank you, Vice. Yeah, so I have a slightly different kind of view than some of the rest of the speakers here today, because I don't work for an organization that has an actual site to open. So we provide virtual field trips and virtual traveling scientist programs, which means we are either meeting the students on site at various parks that we don't own, we just partnership with, like state parks and OC parks, or we have staff going into the classroom to provide traveling science programs. We also do a summer camp, but I'll talk about that in a second. But the reason I bring that up is I kind of view us as we're going to be the long haulers, to use COVID lingo, when it comes to reopening, because I think all of us can agree we really don't know when students are going to be allowed to go, even when they go back in person. When are field trips going to happen again? When is it going to be okay to get students on a bus? When students do go on the bus, is it going to be twice as many buses because they have to be, distance? And then as well, the other side of that, on the traveling scientist side, currently in the CDC guidelines for schools reopening is no visitors on campus, which would prohibit us coming in to the classrooms as well. So we foresee being virtual or some form of virtual for a very long time. We're settling in definitely the rest of the year, and now looking towards next year of what that's going to look like. Our big thing we're talking about now is, what does it look like once the students are back in school, but we are not allowed to go into the school? So will we adjust our programs once again to meet those needs? So it's kind of been this continual adjustment to our programs based on what the guidelines are and how we're able to interact with the students. And part of telling you what we're going through is I kind of have to mention, we also went through a fire in December and lost our headquarters, our offices, and all of our teaching animals. So we started out 2021 with an absolute blank slate, with not a single piece of equipment, animal, or anything. But that's almost been a little bit freeing in some ways, because overall, when we've looked at our programs and how we're going to operate, is we were able to really throw out a lot of stuff that we just always had done. Being around for 46 years, there was a lot that we'd always just done, and that wasn't going to happen anymore. So for our field trip curriculum, I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with, you want to fit as many standards and as many experiences in for the students when they come on your field trip. It also looks good to the teachers. the more standards that you're covering, that it's more enticing. But that obviously was not going to happen in a virtual setting. So we were able to really take a step back and focus on a single standard. So now instead of having a field trip program where there's, 5 or 6 stations that the students go through, and we're hitting on, a plethora of whatever that grade level standards, there's one standard. And we've been able to really focus and delve into the NGSS world. And that's been really helpful. It's changed our teaching, it's changed how we present, and just been a nice kind of break to take a look at what we do. Is it applicable anymore? How can we change it without that rush of, we have to still serve students. Granted, I say this, we were very lucky because we were also part of the Orange County Department of Education. So even though our staffing is much lower than it used to be, greatly lowered, we still do have a number of staff, much more I think than private organizations are dealing with. So we're able to work on these things and develop better, hopefully better teaching in the future. I'm excited. I personally really, really love the virtual teaching, and I'm secretly really going to be sad when it goes away. But that's just a personal thing. I find it really fun challenge. Some of the big challenges that we've kind of faced and worked through, our first one was summer camp. So we do a summer camp. When we faced that this summer, we looked at whether or not we would do in-person. At that point, it was possible to do small in-person summer camps. But because we're not a child care providing camp, that we were providing a shorter day enrichment type program, we didn't really feel that we could provide a camp environment with such low numbers and, maintaining socially distanced and all, and where we were, last June, which is so different from where we are now. So we did do a virtual camp. We wrote curriculum that provided about 2 hours of activities for a kid to do at home without the assistance of a parent. And then we had 3 times a day where we would, they could join in on a Zoom call that we would have them meet animals and do different things like that. So that was really successful. I'd say, check my notes. Okay, yeah, so we talked about we're not sure what's going to happen when the students go back and looking at that next model. And our other big challenge is because we teach to all of Orange County schools, we have made the decision to go on to their platforms. So we've had the challenge of what works on different platforms. In the morning you're on Zoom, afternoon on Teams, and both have their challenges, and both are good and bad in both ways. So that's something we're still really working through, and how to provide that in-person experience in a virtual way. So that's where we are.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, it's always a challenge, and thank you for your thoughts and your insight. I don't know if there's any resources you want to share also in the chat, but thanks again, Amy. And we have our one last speaker, last but not least. Jackie, are you there? Jacqueline? Which do you prefer, Jacqueline? Jacqueline?
Jackie's fine, thank you.
All right. You are from the, Jacqueline Guevara is the Executive Director of the Joshua Tree National Park Association, and she has spent over 25 years in the nonprofit management world. She has a passion for the desert, coupled with an extensive background in social services, which makes her a strong advocate for protecting public lands while promoting education of diverse audiences about the lands and their historical, cultural, and recreational values. And you are a 40-year desert resident, and you moved to Morongo Basin in 2001 and currently lives in the Yucca Valley. So thank you for joining us today.
That's right. Thank you so much for having me. Shout out Ian Chadwick, the ranger at Joshua Tree, who hooked me up with this presentation. Thank you, Ian. And yeah, I'm coming to you from Yucca Valley, which is right next to Joshua Tree. And it is the ancestral lands of the Chemehuevi, Cahuilla, Mojave, and Serrano peoples, and 11 other tribes, actually. And my pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm sorry, I don't have that written in my title. But thank you again for having me on. I heard so much that resonated with me in the other speakers' presentation, so it's kind of cool to go last. Impact, talking about having to do a lot of stuff virtually, the education component. So what we do at the association is we run the 4 visitor centers for Joshua Tree National Park. So we have a strong retail component. And the retail contribution helps to pay for our Desert Institute, which is our field learning institute. It used to be our adult education component. And so, like a lot of other people, it was about mid-March when we shut down. We closed down operations for 3 solid months. So right about the middle of June, we started opening back up. And we did a reopening plan through the state of California. And we just followed what they were asking us to do and then some. But we spent those 3 months leading up to the reopening. I spent a lot of time on phone with lawyers, with insurance agents and things like that, looking at liability issues for our visitor centers and for staff and for visitors and what that would look like. We were able to pay our staff. We have 19 staff. We had 20 at the time. We were able to pay them full wages and benefits through the entire closure, which was a huge, huge blessing for all of us. And that's because we had done so well in the months leading up to the closure, because Joshua Tree, as perhaps you may know, is super, super busy and continued to be very busy. So when I say we were closed, the park was not closed. We were closed. What I did with my staff, though, they're information specialists. They're used to being on site, the majority of them, and talking to visitors to the park. Can't do that virtually. And so I put them all on Basecamp, which is an online platform, had them check in every day and had them learn, had them strengthen their interpretive abilities, I guess. They had to do book reports. It was hilarious. It was, going back in time for a lot of them, but it was really, really awesome. We learned about different parks. We learned about different populations that come to our park. We learned about the history of our park, arts, cultures, the first peoples. It was an amazing opportunity. And so, like Amy said, it was actually, I'm not going to say it was a blessing in disguise, but it was a good opportunity to kind of stop and take stock of what we were doing. The Desert Institute kept rolling. For a while, we had a lot of cancellations for our in-person classes. Again, like others said, our volunteers and most of our choir are in an at-risk category for COVID. And so what we did, we were approached by NPS and we put together some webinars for rangers who were working from home and to kind of keep them going and keep them engaged. And so that's what our Desert Institute staff was able to do during that time. We reopened in June. We have very strict guidelines and standards. We actually own one of the visitor centers, which is a little different, I think, than most people. And so we were able to say in that building what we would do and wouldn't do. Sometimes we had a little more leeway than the federal government guidelines, even though California guidelines are pretty strict. So we did the plexiglass. We did the credit card machines on swivels, like little mini Lazy Susans. We got our staff pointers so they can just kind of turn the credit card so people can do their own thing, as much touchless as possible. Our interpreters for the park are outside most of the time giving information because we did have to reduce the number of people in our visitor centers dramatically. Last January 2020, we had 41,000 people in the month of January to our Joshua Tree Visitor Center. This January, we had 12,000. So we've reduced that dramatically. But people are still able to come up, and because we're lucky to live in the desert, most days are nice enough that they can come up and get some information outside without having to enter the visitor center. What we did with our Desert Institute is we actually canceled our spring season in-person programming because we didn't want to draw more people to the area. And we wanted to make sure everyone was really, really safe. We never expected to be as busy as we are. I don't think any of us expected this was the problem we would have, but it's a challenge and we've risen to it. What we've done with Desert Institute, and going back to Christian's presentation about impact, I'm a social worker turned accidental conservationist. Okay, so I'm all about the people, I'm all about the impact. And what we're doing now is going online with our Desert Institute programming and greatly increasing our footprint. We had about 2,800 participant hours per year for our in-person classes. And in the 9 months we've gone online with what we're calling Desert Live programming, we have over 6,000 participant hours. So we're able to reach more people, different audiences. We're going to be going for different languages. We are going for a younger crowd. We are working on diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's cornerstone for me for everything. We have a cultural advisory council that's helping us out. And it's very exciting. It's something we wanted to do anyway, but again, COVID is forcing our hand. We're currently doing so while we're hiring a content manager to help us step up our online presence and reach more people. I look at stewards of the land. I look at how does someone who is on our mailing list, how do they go through the conversion process to become a volunteer, a member, a donor, but most importantly, a steward of the land. And what is that common language that we can share with everyone? Southern California is an extremely diverse area. Sadly, our visitation does not reflect our population, and our career paths really don't reflect our population. So yeah, Erin, I'm going to be emailing you pretty soon. But anyway, that's it in a nutshell. I could go on for days and days and days with everything we've done, but it's been really successful and exciting so far. And as you know, we're in San Bernardino County. That's one of the hardest hit counties in the country. And hopefully we can move back into our red tier this weekend. But we've been in the most restrictive tier for a long time, and we just keep rolling with it. If we need to bring back, you know, we used to have 3,000 to 4,000 people through Joshua Tree Visitor Center a day. You know, now we let in 20 at a time. If we have to drop it down to 10, we drop it down to 10, and then we can kind of adjust back up. But we're keeping everyone working. We're helping visitors to the park remain safe and recreate responsibly and take care of our resource. And at the end of the day, that's what it's about, is getting that messaging out and keeping people coming back. So that's it.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all your insights. And that's really helpful to hear what you're doing already and how that's working out. I'm going to let Erin take over now because we want to expand this conversation a bit in our breakout rooms, but Erin has a whole method that I think she will explain to you.
Thank you, Blythe. And thank you, all of our speakers, for just taking some time out. And now I think just hearing what you were sharing emphasizes the incredible amount of challenges that all of us have been having to navigate. And sometimes we think we're alone and in that navigation. And I think this is a great opportunity to just come together and recognize that we're in this together. So as part of being in this together is sharing resources. And though you may have heard some great ideas today, we want to make sure that you leave this symposium with a digital goodie bag. And I just came up with that. So what is a digital goodie bag, you ask? And a digital goodie bag is, in this case, it's a Padlet. I don't know if you guys are seeing me. Let me just close that. So Padlet is where I'm curating all of these different things we've been talking about, and where we'd love to have you add some of the things that we're talking about. So I'm going to share a link in the chat in just one moment that we're going to be using for the breakout rooms. And what we wanted to do in the breakout rooms is just start having a discussion, you know, what resources that are you currently using and looking at for reopening museums and visitor centers? What resources do you have for safely guiding walks, hikes, or talks during a pandemic? Have you found anything? We found a whole bunch of sample reopening plans that we thought would be beneficial for you to see. So we've started linking some of those. We'd love for you to just talk about what you're most concerned about. So when we start getting people coming back, and you already heard, we've seen the highest visitation in some of our outdoor spaces like Joshua Tree and California State Parks is right there with you. We've seen some of the highest visitation we've ever had at a time when people were supposed to stay home. Because we don't know how to just stay home. You know, we need to stay busy. People need to get outside and heal outside. So what are you most concerned about? And then you're also going to see, I'll just go through this a little bit. I've already been listing the speaker contacts here, so you don't have to scramble and write them down. And then last but not least, what are some creative solutions for ensuring safe interpretive programs that you've found or that you think of? So that is our Padlet. And the idea is we're going to break you all up into breakout rooms. And you can go ahead and each individually click on the link for the Padlet, or you can maybe have one person in the group that's comfortable with just pulling up the Padlet and being the scribe for your group and helping to put some of these links on this Padlet so all of you can walk away with all of these various resources that you can look at later. So I'm going to share the link to the Padlet now. So go ahead and pull that up. And then when I put you in breakout rooms, you will also, I'll share that again. But so the idea is we're going to spend about the next 25, 30 minutes just talking and providing each other some of the resources that we've been using for these various categories that you see listed on the Padlet. And then we're going to bring everyone back together and just wrap things up and remind each other that we are all here to lean on, because that's, I think, really, really important right now. Some of us may have had a little bit more experience, than others, but we're all here. And that's one of the things that NAI is great about, is it brings us together. So any questions? Please feel free. By the way, everyone's been kind of quiet in the chat. I'm surprised. But feel free to use the chat if you want, if you have questions, but I'm going to go ahead and put us in breakout rooms now. And then we'll be coming back in about 25 minutes or so. So here we go, away we go. Right. And so when we're ready to start asking the questions, then we'll be able to get the right answers. But, we just added a few extra links in ours about scheduling, how interpreters right now need some sanity, and it can't all be digital, because that's not how we roll. We thrive on being able to present programming. And so, Ian brought up something really helpful. He was talking about how at Joshua Tree, they found a controlled environment. They found a place where they could have a controlled guided hike, where it was private, private place. So he wouldn't get, attacked by 40 visitors at the same time, that people would show up to that site because they had signed up ahead of time. And you would have a controlled environment to lead your guided hike, and then sign waivers, basically list all of the COVID restrictions, et cetera. And Ian, that was really interesting, right? Is maybe us thinking of areas where we could control the experience a little bit more, so we don't have to feel like we're going to get overrun. Anything else that came up in your groups as you all were you were all talking that was specific interest, or anything you want to share that you learned?
We had a lot of really interesting conversation and ideas in our groups. We talked a lot about volunteer engagement, how to keep the volunteers feeling like they're getting their social hour in, how to keep them engaged so that they're there when we reopen to whatever that might look like. We had a lot of cool ideas there. Roger operated the Padlet at the beginning and then not, and then it wouldn't work. And then so I just wrote it all down and I'll go throw it on there later. So we just talked, but we talked a lot about virtual programming, virtual volunteer training, tours. One thing we did for Desert Institute volunteers, instead of our annual appreciation dinner, we gave them all gift certificates to a local cafe, and they went in, they picked up their own picnic, and then took pictures, sent them in, what have you, kind of got together that way. We talked about state and CDC guidelines. We talked about safety and risk management for our activities. We talked about different apps we can use, learned about really cool stuff. Roger, I'm going to call you in a minute. And then we talked about continuing with online programming after, and the importance of meeting different people where they are in the virtual world. So we went everywhere from a very easy Zoom link, which isn't always even so easy, all the way to Discord and Twitch, which is what some of the, younger generations are using. My 19-year-old said to me, "What are you talking about, Zoom, Mom? What the heck is that? What is Facebook? You know, you need Discord, you need Twitch, you need to," Ian's laughing at me. Yeah, that was Lucas. But you know, it's true. It's true. In order to be relevant, to reach out to different populations, that's what we need to do. But we're looking at a hybrid model when we come back on for Desert Institute. At least we'll have some live classes. We will continue with online programming. Some people just don't like other people and don't want to be around other people. Some people can't make it. Some people have different abilities. They don't have gas money. Whatever the case may be, they're not comfortable coming through our very conservative gateway town to access our park. Imagine that, huh? Ian's making a face. But Roger had a really cool idea. Roger, I'm gonna put you on the spot with the Zoom thing, with the audio Zoom.
So real quick though, you did say something that I thought was really important. We talked about going higher tech and being more tech, even live in person with no masks when the world is normal, and still being higher tech and being low high tech. One-click Zoom links for your grandparents that can't do the detail stuff, and they can come in and they can check it out. The trick that we did, we had to carry 30 people into a space to do a class, and we did we were in a cell phone range, so everybody that had a cell phone dialed into a Zoom, killed the cameras, and put an earphone in, and then we're standing 20 feet apart. In fact, we were all sitting on a hillside, and we said, so that tree right there, blah, blah, blah. And if there was a person that happened to be sitting under that tree, they took their camera and showed us the tree a little bit, and then people knew they could walk over later. But we could all talk about the thing in a basketball court, football court size space for 30 people. Similarly, we've now invested in 40 $10 walkie-talkies. We're going to figure out the sanitizing thing for group hikes so that people can be together separately.
That's great. Anybody, let's see, any of the other breakout rooms, what did you all, or even, and don't feel like you have to be in solution mode too. I mean, that's what we're here, right? To come together and try to find solutions for some of our common problems. But part of it is maybe identifying some of the common problems. So were there certain concerns that you and found everyone shared in your breakout rooms that we maybe found a solution for? Yeah, Amy.
We talked a lot about volunteers. So the majority of the people in our room were worked with volunteers, and I posed the question of when they thought volunteers were going to be ready, especially with the volunteers usually being of vaccine age in a lot of situations. So were they looking to come back earlier? And very mixed responses of some people, you know, people think differently of where we're going to go and how soon we'll be back with volunteers on site.
Yeah, and I saw that in the one part of the Padlet that talked about the concernometer, right? That's where some of the biggest concerns are, because so many of us are completely dependent, or almost mostly dependent on volunteers to run our programs. So I think that, you know, one of the things that came up, and where are you, Jackie? When you were talking about that first 3 months before you started opening, right? Because I think you are it. You're probably going to get a lot of people reaching out to you after this call, because, and if you don't mind, Jackie, copy your email and I'll make sure I paste it in the Padlet if you're okay.
Okay, I'll throw it in the chat right now.
Great. But the fact that you were talking to lawyers, that we listen, we focused on that a little bit in our group, that, you know, so many of this, we're all afraid of the liability, right? So it's not a matter of not wanting to go forward. It's that we are afraid to go forward because you just don't know what's going to happen.
And that's so true. And what I found is there, you know, no insurance agents were going to cover anything. Nobody was going to say that we were risk-free by reopening. But what I heard over and over again was go above and beyond. And someone else said that, you know, when they got ready, they went above and beyond. You know, we have laser pointers. I got face shields for everybody. I almost got voted off the island when I did that, but I got face shields. They didn't want to wear them. We do a rotating cleaning schedule where, we've got someone giving information for 2 hours, then the next 2 hours they're behind the desk, then the next 2 hours they're wiping down surfaces. We went just to every little detail we could possibly imagine. And that, that's to keep people safe first and foremost, but as a business operator, it's also for liability purposes. What I also heard was, it's very, very difficult to prove where a virus was picked up. It's almost impossible. What one attorney said was, you're going to get lawsuits, possibly. They're going to be frivolous lawsuits, but they're still going to take the time and energy. So we had to weigh that. Do we remain closed? Or do we take that chance? And because we went so overboard with, and I don't even think it's overboard. We're just cautious. We looked at we dotted every I and crossed every T and then some. We looked for the questions we didn't know, the unconscious incompetence areas. We asked our staff, what are you seeing? How are you comfortable? What are you feeling? What's your safety level? How are we doing together? Because they're the ones that are out there working this. And we go from there and we adjust as we go on. But yeah, it's, there is a risk. There is a risk. We did have exposures at one point, and I have a very supportive board, and the board said, shut it all down again, tell everyone double negative tests. And we did. We shut down for 9 days just recently. And everyone had to double negative test before they could come back to work. So I think it's that being willing to go with the ebb and flow is very, very important as well.
I would also add to that quick that
Yeah, please.
from
Ian.
the front line of that same situation, visitors were extremely understanding of the ebb and flow. Like if that during that time, like, hey, not open right, like visitor center's not open right now. I'm here to help you in front. Let me know. And I'm like, all I have to do is just a simple little explanation. They're like, okay, yeah, cool. We're just glad you're here at all. And they really are just happy for anyone there or just something there for them. Because they're just trying to escape and find a way to, get away from what they're worried about too. So they were very understanding, actually. I wasn't always expecting that.
So if I can ask, this is a question I kind of have, and it's a very straightforward question. For those of you that have staff and volunteers in the field, how's the mental health? Like how is how are we caring for that aspect too, right? Because we all have varying levels of comfortability with this, and we see that in our own families, right? Some of our families are happy to get together, and I haven't seen my dad for a year, right? And so we have to respect one another's response to all of this. So for those that are in the field or have people that are in the field, how are you checking in on their mental health and their emotional health right now?
Yes, if someone has any sort of bonding activity that I can help with our staff, that would be.
I have to say, I've been having our enrichments. We've been putting our newsletter out instead of 4 times a year. We've been doing it monthly, and I've actually been calling every single volunteer, and if they didn't answer, just leaving a message, and I get really the most response from that.
One thing that came up in our room is I do work as a volunteer with the Huntington Library here in San Marino. And they have a very active group of volunteers. They're fairly highly trained in their specialty areas. And it was a significant part of their life because I'm, with my Santa Claus beard, a real youngster among the group. And they have had their monthly meetings as usual. They started Zooming them in. They started having additional get-togethers because it was so much of the social life of the volunteer set. And I think they've mostly kept folks engaged and will have them, but they upped the game almost like outreach for donors, almost the same sort of thing to keep the interest there.
I have another thing to add, if I might. Before we reopened, and as I mentioned in my talk, we worked for 3 months online all together every day. I moved everyone to a Monday through Friday schedule. They had to check in every morning. They had an assignment every day. We had Zoom meetings throughout that. And we did a lot of training to get ready to come back. One of the things we did was I have a council member who is an ASL teacher, and she taught my frontline staff how to say in ASL, it's hot out, drink water, whatever, because we've got masks on. People can't read lips. And so we put together a list of things we might say, a list of phrases, including, I don't know how to say that. And we recorded that Zoom, and it's on Basecamp, so people can go back and refresh. Those were 2 Zooms, actually. We did de-escalation technique training. I reached out to a local clinic. I used to work there, a mental health clinic, got their hotline number, and it's completely confidential. I give that to all staff. I said, hey, if you want to call, there are people there to talk to you. But I think also our attitudes are checking in with the staff. I still use Basecamp to check in and give them updates on what's going on. And the minute I heard there was an exposure, we shut down again. So I think it's building that trust within the staff as well. And like I said, when I gave them face shields, one person asked for a face shield and nobody else wanted it. I mean, my staff are like, they're happy that we're looking out for them. And I think they feel trust. And that really gives us a huge level of responsibility. But by the same time, the staff knows that and I have a lot more leeway than the park itself because I'm a nonprofit and we own a visitor center. As I said, that gives me a lot more, I said to the superintendent, I'm done, I'm pulling my staff. I can't staff the visitor centers. We're not going to do that. And we have a great relationship with the park as well. We're all kind of all one conglomeration. So I think that building that trust helps as well. Also, the open door policy. If anyone feels uncomfortable, and we had one person who left because she didn't feel comfortable with working there, and that was fine. There were no hard feelings. It was cool. We're like, we can't lay you off because that's not fair to everyone else. But you have our blessings. We care about you and we want you to feel comfortable. So the constant check-ins, the resources from the outside, and then just walking the talk. When I say I care, I mean I care. If I find out something's going wrong, we're shutting down again. And that's going forward. So I think that really helped.
And I think that's part of like showing that your staff and your volunteers that you guys are you're flexible is like one of the biggest things I think that's helped us, to let them know, like we've had volunteers that strictly did tours, but they still want to come in. I had a volunteer when she first started, she said, I'm forcing myself to come in and volunteer because I need to know that there's a world out there that's safe and I don't have to be paranoid when I go out. And this is going to help me kind of wean back into that. So she went from doing tours to now she's doing artifact work with us. And we've come up with extra projects for some of our tour guides so that they can still come out. They get to, see somebody face to face and still get to help, a cause that they're really into, and kind of wean back into, going back out into the world. I think another thing that we kind of missed talking about is the vaccine, and how are we going to kind of transition to that with staff and with the public, and how do we make sure that resource is there for our staff and they know what happens.
Well, and maybe, I think we're just at the beginning of this conversation, right? We're at a conversation that we all probably could have benefited from months ago. But we're going to have like round 2 of the Wild West Symposium when the vaccines really start coming out, right? Because right now they're only reaching a small subset of the population. But what does happen when they're reaching a much larger portion of the population, right? Or what happens, and I think this is like the fact, Jackie, you mentioned the de-escalation training. That's brilliant, because, right, what does happen when someone that's vaccinated comes up and they say, well, I can come in, and then how do you respond to that, right? Or so let's have a round 2. In a few months, when we see how this progresses and some people get some experience under their belt with this, I think that would be really helpful. And I know there's areas like out in the Mojave, one of our employees, he's already gotten a vaccine and he's as young as I am, because I'm really young. But, you know, and so has basically the entire community because they were available. So how is that changing that community a little bit? So it'll be interesting to see. I want to turn it, Blythe, you're back. You got reception back. Okay, good. I just want to say, I'm not sure how many of you joining today are NAI members. We really wanted to make this available to everybody. We thought it was super important. And so whether you're an NAI member or not an NAI member, we just want to say thank you that you tuned in with us. And also, you know, times are hard right now, but there are programs with NAI, like NAI Cares, where they're helping provide some financial assistance with things in general, but definitely with membership. And if you have ever considered becoming an NAI member, I think you can see this is one of the real benefits of NAI membership, is just getting to be connected with other professionals that are trying to do the same thing you're doing. So that's just my little NAI membership pitch. I have to. I feel strongly about it. But Blythe, I'm going to turn it back over to you. And Blythe, you know, we did a round of applause before, but seriously, you threw this together in a short amount of time, and you didn't make us sit in Zoom meetings for a workshop that went on for a week and a half. So we thank you so much for all of the effort you put into this, but I'm handing it back over to you.
Well, thank you, Erin. And also Ian and our whole board is very awesome. And Peter Ostrowski also helped with the social media. So very happy to work together with all of them. And I really appreciate all of our speakers. I know that wasn't a whole lot of time, but hopefully it was a spark point for some more conversations. And I appreciate you all. And I know where to find you now when I have questions, I guess. So thank you so much.
Can I get a quick plug in as well, Blythe?
Yes.
You got lots of plugs, right? So while you're leaving, just know, so I am also on the helping with the upcoming NAI 2021 National Convention, which is actually in our region technically this coming November. So it's going to be in Palm Springs, Palm Desert area. It's looking like it's going to be a weird one. You know, it's going to be both in person and online. It looks like we're still figuring out a lot of things, but for all of you all who are in this meeting and in our region and want to volunteer and want to help us like try and maneuver whatever the heck a hybrid conference is going to look like, please reach out to me or to me, and I can pass you along to our board. I know we have people from the Living Desert. We have Diana from Riverside Corona District as well. So we're always looking for help, and it's going to be a really fun puzzle that you might be able to help us figure out how to make work. So I just would love for y'all to come here to Palm Springs and drink tiki drinks with me, but we'll see what happens.
If that wasn't the best positive spin I've ever heard, that was pretty good, Ian. And then I'll throw in a quick pitch. InterpTech is a conference. It's coming up in 2 months. It's at the end of April. It's going to be good. And I believe $80 for the entire 3-day conference. We already have a couple of great keynote speakers lined up. The agenda will be coming out shortly. But this is basically a conference that's all about empowering what we all have been forced to do now, which is blend technology into our interpretive programming. So keep your eye out for that. You can find out more information on the NAI website. All right, Blythe, you get to send it off. You get to...
I thought you were going to put on a weird song or something to send it out. No?
Oh, do you want me to finish out with that video we were watching for a little bit of laughter?
Some kind of COVID parody or something like that. But anyway, thank you all again. And if you didn't quite put your resources in the Padlet, please put them maybe in the chat, or you can email us at nairegion8@gmail.com. And I don't know, it's nice to see all your faces. Thank you.
Yep. And everyone look out for your recording. You're getting a recording and the link to the Padlet. So keep your eye out for that and feel free to share it.